A prophecy foretold that a daughter of the Shu family would emerge, one capable of turning the tide, securing the realm, and entrusting the empire. The third prince eagerly sought my hand in marriage, vowing undivided devotion from that day forward. After our union, I led 3,000 elite cavalrymen to stabilize his crumbling Duching empire. Upon my return, he embraced his personal maid, mocking my empty sleeves and the scar upon my cheek. He seized my command seal and stripped me of my empress's robes. Shu Wanlan, I cannot let the censors say I am ungrateful. Only by tarnishing your virtue can I legitimately depose you. Facing the vile men he brought, I smiled bitterly and leapt from the city wall. Yet I reborn to the day the third prince was humiliated, nearly stripped naked before all. The expected death never came. The spring evening breeze carried a refreshing coolness, though it was rather noisy. Third prince, what gives you the right? How dare you covet Sister Wanlan? Wanlan, don't be fooled by this pretty boy's looks. The voices sounded vaguely familiar. I blinked, taking in the scene before me. In the Imperial garden, a group of half-grown children huddled around a figure that seemed strangely familiar. My breath caught in my throat. The third prince, Gu Jun. I had returned to that very day, the moment my life of endless entanglement with him began. In my past life, Gu Jun was an obscure prince, his birth mother merely a lowly court singer. Her extraordinary beauty earned her a place in the emperor's harem as Lady Yan, which is how Gu Jun came to be. But serving others with beauty alone could never last. After giving birth to Gu Jun, Lady Yan's beauty faded rapidly, her figure lost its grace, and she was soon cast aside by that scoundrel of an emperor. Consequently, Gu Jun, the prince, was also neglected. Even his name sounded half-hearted. Yet he possessed an exceptionally handsome face, making him a frequent target of bullying by the other princes. On this day in his past life, Gu Jun mustered his courage to speak to me, only to be spotted by several princes. Enraged that someone of his lowly status dared seek my company, they ordered their servants to strip him naked in public. Though young, I possessed a fiery spirit and, believing myself to be a champion of justice, intervened to stop them. Thus began my life, which could only be described as a farce. At that moment, the second prince waved his hand dramatically. Strip him naked. Teach him a lesson he won't forget. Guards stepped forward at the command, surrounded by countless palace attendants and eunuchs, all watching the spectacle unfold. Gu Jun's expression changed instantly. His already fair complexion flushed crimson, yet he stubbornly refused to beg for mercy. His eyes, brimming with moisture, met mine with a hint of expectation. He looked at me. I looked at him. Whoa. I don't recall this eye contact scene from my past life. Ah, who cares about that now? Following the script, it was time for this heroine to make her entrance. So, living up to expectations, I stepped forward. Amidst Gu Jun's astonished gaze, I let out a loud, cheeky whistle before offering my sincere compliment. Whoa, he's pretty fair-skinned. The entire Imperial garden fell into an eerie silence. After a long moment, the second prince couldn't help but glance over, then agreed with a flushed face, it is pretty white. With the atmosphere built up to this point, everyone couldn't resist taking a closer look, murmuring in admiration, the third prince really is pale. Only Gu Jun was on the verge of collapse. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice hoarse. Loner. I dodged his reaching hand and pretended to hide behind the second prince. Ignoring the mocking stares of those present, Gu Jun tentatively asked, You came back too, right? I looked at him with feigned innocence, pretending not to understand. Truthfully, I already knew the answer. The name Loner, he had only ever called me that during our grand wedding ceremony in my previous life. Back then, I had been overjoyed by such an intimate address. Only later did I learn that the personal maid who had always cared for him was named Loner. When I stepped forward amidst the turbulent court affairs, when I shouldered the crumbling Duching dynasty with my own body, where was Gu Jun? He was embracing his Loner, mocking my foolish affection. When I returned victorious, having sacrificed an arm and bearing an incurable scar upon my cheek. What awaited me was Gu Jun's cold, mocking sneer, You didn't truly believe I loved you, did you? Had it not been for that prophecy, I would never have spared you a second glance. You are no different from my detestable brothers, all of you wear that haughty, superior expression. I detest people like you most of all. Then he seized my command seal, stripped me of my empress robes. Yet he dared not confront the censors directly, resorting instead to petty schemes to tarnish my reputation. Shu Wanlan, I cannot let the censors accuse me of ingratitude. Only by tarnishing your virtue can I legitimately depose you. Rest assured, even so, I shall take you into the harem as my own. I've even chosen your title, Lady Lan. Does it please you? I'd much rather slap you silly. I straightened my spine and retorted, your abacus beads are flying right into my face. What did you say back then? Among 3,000 rivers, I'll take but one ladleful. So what? Now your ladle's leaking? Gu Jun had nothing in excess except his pride. Faced with my provocation, and Lanner's egging him on, he brought in a dozen unsavory men, claiming he'd temper my spirit. At this, I gave a bitter laugh and leapt from the city wall. As consciousness faded, I heard Gu Jun's heart-wrenching cry, Lanner. I chuckled sarcastically, they called Lanner, not you. A voice of immense authority cut through the air, snapping me from my memories. What is this commotion? Instantly, every man knelt before him. The emperor surveyed the scene, his gaze passing over Gu Jun without a flicker of emotion. He cared nothing for the son, I even doubted he remembered having one. In the deathly silence that followed, a voice rang out, eerily familiar, good heavens. This little rascal gets out of hand if not disciplined daily. Shu Wanlan. Come here at once. The palace is the most sacred place on earth. Don't force me to spank you. I blinked, fought back tears, and threw myself into the arms of the middle-aged man who'd spoken. This left him utterly flustered. This is some new tactic to avoid punishment? This was my father, the illustrious Duke of the nation, renowned for his military exploits in the Great Qing. Though he scolded me fiercer than anyone, he'd never laid a finger on me since childhood. In my past life, Gu Jun had threatened my life, leading to his own suicide. The emperor, however, smiled, I find it quite fitting. The prophetess, how could she be a quiet, demure lady of noble birth? A bit of liveliness is only natural. I hear she's been studying martial arts lately? I've just acquired a peerless sword, let's bestow it upon Wanlan. I hastily expressed my gratitude, thinking this trip to the palace hadn't been in vain, at least I'd gained a precious treasure. Only then did the emperor seem to notice Gu Jun. Frowning in displeasure, he declared, your clothes barely cover you, how is this befitting a prince? Hurry and tidy your appearance. Gu Jun flushed crimson as he tugged at his clothes, but the fabric was already threadbare. The slightest pull tore a gaping hole. I craned my neck eagerly, wanting to watch. Suddenly, a hand shot out, covering my eyes. A crisp voice ordered, don't look. It was Crown Prince Gu Qing'an, the heir to the throne who'd been the most promising candidate in my past life. He spent his days cramming lessons beside the emperor, only to die young from illness. Calculating the timeline, it must have been just this past year or two. Seeing my discontented struggle, the Crown Prince pursed his lips. His fingers covering my eyes shifted, secretly parting to reveal a small slit. I opened my eyes wide to look. The farce concluded. My father told me to find any palace to scrounge a meal, as he had matters to discuss with the emperor. Fine. You truly aren't afraid I'll be poisoned by some imperial concubine. In the end, the Crown Prince took me in, along with the ever-shadowing second prince. The two of us camped out in the Eastern Palace, feasting to our heart's content. To be fair, the Eastern Palace's cooks were something else. These roasted squabs smelled divine. Once we were stuffed and ready for soup to wash it all down, the Crown Prince spoke sternly, Wanlan, Gu Shengwu, listen carefully. Don't go provoking Gu Jun for no reason. Or you won't even know how you died. Soup sprayed from my mouth, aren't you speaking out of turn? Second Prince Gu Shengwu retorted indignantly, brother. That kid is truly no good. You all think he's harmless, but he's the most treacherous. You don't know, but his palace is always littered with abused and killed kittens and puppies. Once I even saw him do it myself, and he denied it. And another thing. Last time Consort Lu was punished by Father Emperor? That was his doing. Believe me. He really is no good. I slurped down the rest of my soup, belched contentedly, and agreed, I believe you. Actually, thinking back, Gu Shengwu had said these exact words to me in my previous life too. But back then, Gu Jun was a master manipulator. He'd always whine pitifully, "I know His Majesty doesn't like me. Wanlon, don't blame His Majesty, it's all my fault. Why else would he only speak ill of me, never anyone else?" Looking back now, that 2 lifetime worth of twisted cloth must have wrapped itself around my little brain. It made me never once suspect that Gu Jun's scoundrel. The Crown Prince said no more. Seeing we'd finished our meal, he dismissed us with attendants. Before leaving, I faintly overheard his order, "Search the entire Eastern Palace thoroughly, especially the maids." Before I could ponder further, a soft, delicate voice interrupted my thoughts. "This servant greets Princess Wanlon." Oh right, I am still a princess, after all. My father had no other virtues, but he was thick-skinned. Before I even opened my eyes, he'd already shamelessly wrested a title from the Emperor's hands. "Your Majesty, look, the osmanthus cakes from the Imperial kitchen today are truly fragrant. More fragrant than the title my daughter might possess. Though, if you don't grant the title, that's fine too. If not, this servant will return tomorrow to inquire again." The Emperor was thoroughly annoyed. With a wave of his hand, I secured the iron rice bowl of a princess title. Bowing before me with an expression of delicate vulnerability was none other than Lanner, Gu Jun's personal maid. "Your Highness, I beg you, please go see the 3rd prince." Before I could speak, Gu Shengwu piped up from the side. He scrutinized Lanner from head to toe, staring until her face flushed crimson. Only then did he drawl, "Truly worthy of the 3rd prince's household." Mistaking his tone for praise, Lanner blushed deeper and stammered, This. Thank you for your kind words, 2nd prince. This servant truly has no." Before she could finish, Gu Shengwu cut her off, still just as obnoxious. "Have you no sense of propriety? You dare obstruct Princess Wanlon? Even if you obstructed her, you shouldn't have failed to perform the full ceremonial bow. Guards! Take her away. Administer 50 lashes, then throw her into the Internal Revenue Department to relearn her place." Lanner's face paled instantly. Her knees buckled, and she fell to the ground, pleading. This servant was merely anxious. "I beg your Highness for mercy." The tyrannical 2nd prince now basked in my stunned gaze, his face radiating the smug pride of one who abuses his power. In my previous life, I'd poured all my focus into Gu Jun, never bothering to truly understand others. Our few hurried encounters had been brief and unproductive. Little did I know this 2nd prince was a master of defying expectations. Lanner had long been Gu Jun's confidant, practically a co-ruler in his palace. With her confidence and her looks, she'd never been treated this way before. Kneeling there, she was utterly consumed by humiliation. I found it amusing. Does being treated like a master make one truly a master? Seeing neither the 2nd prince nor I speak, Lanner bit her lip and plucked up the courage to say, "This servant has always been devoted to the master. If the 2nd prince and the princess wish to punish me for this, then I have no words to say." She spoke with an air of righteous indignation, prostrate on the ground. I curved my lips into a smile, using the great sword I'd just seized to lift her chin, forcing her to look up. Lanner was compelled to meet my gaze, her face filled with unease. After a long moment, I withdrew my hand and said indifferently, "Lead the way. You are not yet worthy to be my enemy." In my past life, I did indeed hate Lanner. But in the end, what did she amount to? I disdained to seek revenge against her. This time, I returned with only 2 goals: to condemn Gu Jun to eternal damnation, to fortify the Daqing dynasty like an impregnable fortress, protecting its countless subjects. Under the weight of successive blows, Lanner wilted like a withered radish, daring not utter another word. Gu Shengwu and I followed her to the palace where Gu Jun resided. Before we even entered, a shrill female voice pierced the air, "You ungrateful wretch! How dare you ruin the rosewood furniture the Emperor graciously bestowed upon us? Failing to win His Majesty's favor is one thing, but to squander his gifts so recklessly. You deserve to be a failure for the rest of your life." The moment we stepped through the palace gate, a porcelain vase flew straight at me. 2 cries of "Watch out!" overlapped as 2 figures darted forward, trying to shield me. The intention was good, but the execution was utterly misguided. Moving too fast, the two collided with a thud and tumbled aside. Seeing the porcelain bottle hurtling toward me, I drew my sword and struck it midair, shattering it instantly. Shattered pieces drifted down, scattering across the floor. Gu Xingwu and Gu Jun sat on the ground, gaping at me with dumbfounded expressions. I shot them a disdainful glance, weaklings. The shrill commotion and litter-tossing came from none other than Gu Jun's birth mother, Lady Yan. In her favored days, she had been a woman of grace and beauty. But since falling out of favor, her temper had grown increasingly foul. She blamed Gu Jun's birth for fading her beauty and causing her disgrace. Thus, she always spoke harshly to Gu Jun. Moreover, since Gu Jun was an unloved prince who couldn't serve as her bargaining chip for favor, their relationship remained distant despite being biological. Now, with a bright red handprint on his cheek, Gu Jun looked at me with hurt. "Lanner, this is for you." I looked down at his outstretched palm and saw a hairpin carved from purple sandalwood. In my past life, Gu Jun, unloved and penniless, couldn't afford expensive gifts for me. Yet I never minded, instead supporting him whenever I could. His repayments were always these small tokens, thoughtful, perhaps, but worthless. Seeing Gu Jun deliberately expose the wound on his hand, my heart remained utterly unmoved. A flicker of amusement even crossed my mind, a cheaply made trinket. This princess has no interest in it. Keep it for yourself. Lanner instantly felt heartbroken, her voice filled with righteous indignation. "How can your highness treat his highness's feelings so cruelly?" He personally dismantled the rosewood furniture to carve this hairpin by hand. "Ah!" A sharp crack echoed, and Lanner clutched her face, staring at me in disbelief. "Your highness. You struck me?" I shook my hand dismissively, sneering. "If I hit you, I hit you. Do I need to pick a day for it? Who do you think you are? Dare to criticize this princess? Rosewood furniture? My personal maids use better than this. I dare not accept his sentiment. If you like it, you may have it." As Gu Jun's eyes bulged with fury, I casually handed the hairpin to Lanner. Lanner hurried to catch it. But before her fingers could close around it, I tightened my grip, channeling my inner strength. In an instant, the hairpin shattered into dust, scattered by the wind. I lifted the corner of my mouth. "What I don't want, you don't deserve." Lanner stared in disbelief. Gu Jun's eyes reddened, his voice trembling. "Lanner. Lanner, I was wrong. We can start over. This time, I'll give you my whole heart. Okay?" I turned away without a second glance. "Tell His Majesty that the third prince is persistently harassing this princess. Who knows what schemes he's plotting? Whether your intentions are genuine or false, nothing can erase the blood feud from my past life. No secret stays hidden within the palace walls." Before I even left the palace grounds, word had spread throughout the entire court about how third Prince Gu Jun had exhausted every effort to win my favor, only to be rejected. The emperor publicly rebuked him. Disgraceful. A worthless piece of trash. Perhaps driven by menopausal irritability, the emperor casually ordered 20 lashes for him. Not many, but utterly devastating. After all, in my previous life, Gu Jun ultimately ascended the throne. Regardless of how despicable his methods were, his status became supremely exalted. To receive 20 strokes in public, under the gaze of me, the crown prince, the second prince, and a crowd of guards and eunuchs. He had lost every shred of dignity. The humiliation gnawing at Gu Jun's heart was excruciating. His hands clenched the stool beneath him so tightly his knuckles turned white, trembling slightly. Just as the guards were about to bring down the first stroke, I spoke up to stop them. "Hold." Gu Jun looked at me as if he'd heard the voice of heaven, his eyes filled with hope. I felt a momentary daze. It was just like this in my past life. When he confessed his love to me, when he cried about being neglected, when he said his brothers couldn't tolerate him. He always had that look in his eyes. He knew I was soft-hearted and would always give in to help him. And time and again, I paved his path, cleared his obstacles, and subsidized him with real gold and silver. Lanner. Gu Jun's faint, weary call snapped me back to reality. I flashed him a radiant smile, just as his hope began to flicker, only for me to crush it mercilessly. Reaching for the guard's punishment rod, I inquired politely, "Guard, may I take over?" The words barely left my lips. The guard's mouth twitched. The crown prince fell silent. Gu Xinggu grew excited. Gu Jun froze in shock. I weighed the rod in my hand and smiled. It's a perfect fit, isn't it? My martial arts skills were advancing rapidly at that time, and my grip was stronger than most men's. For the first few strokes, Gu Jun clung to his ridiculous pride, gritting his teeth against the pain. But soon, he couldn't hold back any longer, letting out a scream like a pig being slaughtered. After 20 strokes, Gu Jun looked like he'd been dragged out of water, drenched in sweat. I covered my nose in disgust and whispered in his ear, "With me, there's no fresh start. Only blood for blood." With that, I turned away without another glance and walked out. Passing by the crown prince, he shot me a meaningful look. I lifted the corner of my mouth, returning his gaze with a smile. That night, under the cover of darkness and wind, I slipped into the crown prince's. Not the boudoir, but the sleeping quarters. The crown prince sat neatly dressed, drinking alone beneath the moon. I plopped down right across from him without ceremony. "Tell me your story." The crown prince. Unsurprisingly, he too had been reborn. But after his death in his previous life, he hadn't reported to the underworld. A wandering soul, he lingered among the living, even witnessing my wretched existence. In doing so, he also discovered why his own life ended so abruptly. It turned out that Gu Jun was treacherous not only to outsiders but also to his own kin. His birth mother, Lady Yan, was actually of the Yi tribe. The very same Yi tribe that had nearly destroyed the great Qing Empire in his previous life. When the Yi invaded, it coincided with the simultaneous deaths of the crown prince, the emperor, and my father. Gu Jun had just inherited a kingdom teetering on the brink of collapse. I vowed to defend his territory and reclaim lost lands, never suspecting he was the very source of the calamity. Yan Changzai had been sent to the palace by her tribe to steal Da Qing's intelligence. By chance, Gu Jun discovered this plot. He used it to blackmail his birth mother and forged an alliance with the Yizhu tribe. He knew full well that by his own merits, he had no claim to the throne. Thus, he colluded with foreign tribes externally while flattering me internally. He secretly administered a slow-acting poison obtained from the Yi tribe to the crown prince, causing his untimely death. He then exploited Gu Xingwu's hot temper to lure him into a deadly trap. With all obstacles cleared, he ascended the throne. Yet after his coronation, he reneged on his promises to the Yi tribe, refusing to grant them half the realm. This provoked the Yi tribe's invasion. With incompetent generals at the border and no wise ruler in the court, the great Qing was nearly destroyed. After hearing this, I remained unsettled for a long time. I could have sacrificed myself for the nation, but I never imagined I would die at the hands of a traitor. Fortunately, heaven granted me a second chance. This time, I would never let Da Qing face such peril. At this moment, 5 years remained before that catastrophe. Gu Jun likely didn't know the crown prince had also been reborn, giving us the advantage. The crown prince and I plotted through the night until we reached a consensus. As I was leaving, he suddenly called out, "Wan Lan. Your marriage." My heart tightened. Truly, no one born into imperial families is ever simple. I feigned indifference. With the Xiongnu still unvanquished, how can I think of home? Let us live through this catastrophe first. The crown prince fell silent. But I knew he hadn't abandoned the matter. Because of that prophecy, I must marry the future emperor. I have no choice. Even without Gu Jun, another ruthless emperor might still emerge. Half a month later, as Gu Jun's injuries began to heal, he rushed to my residence to find me. He was told I had already departed for the frontier with my father. Devastated, Gu Jun accelerated his plans. But he hadn't anticipated the crown prince had already laid his trap. 5 years passed in the blink of an eye. Upon my return to the capital, the first news to reach me was explosive. Third Prince Gu Jun had colluded with foreign tribes and murdered his elder brother. The emperor, enraged, ordered a thorough investigation. What they uncovered was staggering. It turned out His Majesty himself had been cuckolded. Gu Jun wasn't royal blood at all. His mother had forcibly arranged his birth to secure her favor. Whether it was a court physician or a guard. Even Lady Yan herself couldn't recall with certainty. This revelation was nothing short of explosive within the royal family's secret history. Before I could even return home to change, an imperial edict summoned me to the palace. A flicker of doubt stirred within me, but there was no time to ponder it as I hurriedly entered the palace grounds. The moment I stepped into the grand hall, a voice, old and frail, rang out, "Wanlon has returned. Why did your father not accompany you?" I kept my expression neutral, bowed respectfully, and replied, "Your Majesty, father is delayed and still on the road." Silence hung in the hall for what felt like an eternity, so long I thought the emperor had fallen asleep, before a reply came, "Rise." As I rose, I noticed the emperor's aged face, his dark circles pronounced, yet his spirit was unnaturally alert. My heart skipped a beat. Something felt terribly off. The crown prince sat nearby, reviewing memorials. In the shadow at the emperor's feet knelt a figure clad in rags, their face indistinct. In the suffocating silence, the emperor slowly spoke, "Wanlon has grown up. Is there anyone you fancy? Shall I arrange a marriage for you? Here it comes." Thankfully, I was prepared. I cleared my throat and declared loudly, "Your Majesty." "There is." At these words, the emperor, the crown prince, and even the kneeling figure turned their gaze toward me. The emperor's voice betrayed no emotion, merely curiosity. "Oh? Which family's son is it? Such good fortune?" I lifted my skirt hem and knelt to confess, "Your Majesty, it is not a man. It is a woman. This servant girl loves." "A woman?" "She is the famed slender horse of Yangzhou, a renowned courtesan. Her figure is sleek and her face is fair. With a voice like that, when she sings a little tune. TSK. This servant girl melts completely. Your Majesty. Crown Prince." He. Didn't expect that, did you? Perhaps my confession was too shocking, causing the emperor to gasp for breath, nearly meeting the founding emperor. After finally catching his breath, he waved me away. "Xiao Junzi, escort the princess out of the palace." The figure that had been prostrate on the ground stirred, a feeble voice responding, "Yes, Your Majesty." In that instant, I recognized his face, Gu Jun. He bowed his head submissively, bending over with utmost reverence, "Princess, please." My heart was torn in 1,000 directions. No explanation was needed. I understood. The emperor's punishment had already fallen upon Gu Jun. Only the method was utterly despicable. I thought Gu Jun would die at most, settling our grievances. Yet the emperor had him castrated and made him a eunuch. Gu Jun, who'd grown up within these palace walls, was now forever confined here in such a humiliating manner. "Do you feel pity?" I snapped back to reality. It was Gu Jun asking me. After a moment's thought, I shook my head frankly. "To be honest, no." Gu Jun gave a bitter smile. "Yes. You should hate me. How could you feel pity? But do you know? Born into royalty, I had no choice. I know you've allied with the crown prince, but ultimately, he's no different from me." The emperor aged so rapidly precisely because of the elixir he offered. I once poisoned the crown prince, yet now he commits regicide and patricide. If you cannot serve him, he will eliminate you without hesitation. Before he finished speaking, the chief eunuch called out to him from afar, his tone brimming with impatience, "Little Junzi. Stop bothering the princess. What gives you the right to chat idly with the princess? Hurry up and scrub the chamber pot." Gu Jun flinched at the words, likely no stranger to such bullying. He shot me one last lingering look before hurrying away. The crown prince's visit came sooner than I'd anticipated. No sooner had he taken his seat than he dropped a bombshell. "I have petitioned His Majesty to marry you as my principal consort." I gasped in shock. "What? That's impossible." The crown prince's eyes darkened as he spoke slowly. "You refuse?" I shook my head honestly. "You're not my type. I prefer slender legs and a soft waist." The crown prince. The crown prince gritted his teeth. "Wanlon. You should know, you have no choice, and neither do I. Because of that prophecy, I cannot risk the throne changing hands by letting you go to another." I fell silent. After a long moment, the crown prince softened his tone, offering comfort, "But rest assured, I am not Gu Jun. Status, honor, I will give you everything, as long as you are well. We Both being well, isn't that good? I gave a mocking laugh. This makes you no different from Gu Jun. For a moment, the crown prince seemed on the verge of fury, but after a long pause, he fell silent again, offering a self-mocking chuckle. You're right. There's no difference. Before the Empire, we're all but ants. Whoever sits upon that dragon throne will change. Don't blame me. As the crown prince rose to leave, I murmured softly, in the dead of night, when dreams return, may you at least not blame yourself. Whether he heard me or not, he walked step by step down the path he had chosen. I knew the crown prince had no choice. The emperor grew more senile by the day, the empire teetering in his hands. For the crown prince to govern with diligence, he must first destroy the old order to build anew. Gu Jun was ambitious but lacked the skill to govern. The crown prince had to cut off his retreat. As for me, I held considerable prestige in the military. If I didn't marry the crown prince, marrying anyone else would be a hidden threat. The crown prince was right. That dragon throne truly turns anyone who sits upon it into a fool. Only now, I suddenly began to doubt myself. What exactly was the purpose of starting over? Before the imperial decree of the arranged marriage could be issued, an urgent dispatch from the frontier arrived. The Yi tribe had united 18 neighboring tribal states to launch an attack on the northern frontier. General Feng, commander of the northern frontier garrison, had betrayed his post, colluding with foreign forces to open the gates and surrender the city. Within a mere 10 days, 9 cities along the northern frontier fell. The news sent shockwaves across the nation, plunging the imperial court into chaos. Upon hearing the report, the emperor toppled from his throne and fell into a deep, unconscious stupor. Whether he truly fainted or feigned unconsciousness remains to be seen. My father commanded the southern frontier. Already en route, he received the news and acted decisively. Half his forces raced back to reinforce the southern defenses, guarding against a feint to the east while the enemy struck the west. The other half bypassed the capital, heading straight for the northern frontier. But the question of who should lead the troops sparked a fierce debate in the court. Some suggested my father should go, while others countered, what about the southern frontier? Some proposed the young, inexperienced general, only to face objections that he lacked the expertise for such a crucial role. I watched this farce unfold with a cold eye, finding it utterly ridiculous. After court adjourned, the crown prince sent word for me to discuss matters at the Eastern Palace. I stormed through the gates and delivered a punch straight to his face. Have you lost your mind? The invasion in my previous life was indeed severe, but it never escalated to colluding with foreign powers. The traitorous General Feng was merely a lowly minor official back then. It was this lifetime's crown prince who, to plant his own men, personally promoted him and placed him in such a crucial position on the northern frontier. I'm not unaware that you've been planting your own people far and wide. But I thought you knew better. Infighting is one thing, but how dare you gamble with the Qing dynasty's very foundation? The crown prince lay on the ground, struck down by my fist, silent and motionless. After a long pause, his voice rose, tinged with bewilderment. I thought I could do better than Gu Jun. So, whose hands will ultimately destroy this empire? I grabbed his collar and yanked him up from the ground. Get up. Clean up your own mess. The emperor played dead so long he truly died. The crown prince ascended hastily. His first imperial decree appointed me Grand Marshal of the army, bound for the northern frontier to quell the war. On the day of departure, he came personally to see me off. The imperial robe couldn't conceal the weariness etched between his brows. But the boy who'd broken down in the Eastern Palace was gone forever. The empire and the passage of time could no longer tolerate his panic. We exchanged a smile, and suddenly, we both felt at ease. The newly crowned young emperor spoke with a laugh. Help me clean up this mess one last time. I swear it won't happen again. When you return, you can roam the world with your Yangzhou beauty, slender-legged, soft-waisted. I arched my eyebrow and smiled. It's a deal. In my heart, I chuckled to myself. There's no such thing as a Yangzhou beauty, I'm just teasing you. When the time comes, I'll slip into my most beautiful dress, roam the world, and find myself a handsome man. By the time I arrived at the frontier with my troops, Qing had already lost 11 cities in succession. Guarding the final line of defense was a 70-year-old general. Both his arms were long gone, yet he had forcibly impaled weapons into his stumps, fighting with fierce vigor to repel wave after wave of enemies. Seeing me arrive, the old general seemed to exhale a sigh of relief, his vitality visibly draining from his body. His eyes glazed over as he murmured, I've done my damn duty. The rest is yours, princess. I gently closed the old general's eyes and performed the military salute. All fell silent, yet we had no time for grief. Don your armor. Take your place on the battlefield. Turn the tide. Secure the land. The campaign raged for over a month, draining every last ounce of strength from us all. Finally, we drove the enemy back to the border. In their final throes, they fought like rabid dogs, savage and relentless. They fought by the principle, though I am defeated, you shall not fare well either, launching vicious counterattacks. My forces suffered heavy losses, with only a little over 30,000 survivors remaining. The rest were left behind on this blood-soaked, ancient land. The leader of the E tribe, Yaij, like a starving wolf cornered in desperation, kept his eyes fixed on me. My strength was nearly spent, old and new wounds piling up, pushing me to the brink. Amidst the assault of 4 or 5 Izu warriors, joined by Yaij himself, I was unseated. Before I could scramble back up, enemy blades closed in. Just as I thought it was all over, a figure lunged forward, shielding me with his body. The sound of blades piercing flesh rang out, unmistakably clear. Gu Jun, who had secretly followed me, seemed to finally shed a heavy burden. He looked at me and smiled, Wanlon, I'm sorry. Will you forgive me if I trade my life for it? I sighed softly, let's go. Grievances and passions cannot outweigh the weight of the empire. The annals record that the Battle of the Northern Frontier marked the dawn of the Daqing dynasty's golden age. From then on, under the rule of the new emperor, Gu Qingyan, Daqing reached its zenith. The people lived in peace and contentment, officials devoted themselves to the welfare of the populace. It couldn't have been better. But the cost couldn't have been greater. Tens of thousands of soldiers' bones littered the fields, countless commoners lost their loved ones. Princess Wanlon never left that land again. Not even a complete set of her bones could be pieced together. Gu Qingyan posthumously honored Shu Wanlon as Princess Wanlon. He personally acknowledged, the annals of history, written in blue ink, must contain a page dedicated to her in bold, dark strokes. The end.